The real story of Hanukkah begins after the Bible is done. The age of the Maccabees and their brave revolt in the name of religious freedom came some 250 years after the last books of the Hebrew Bible were already set in place. But the miraculous legend of that small band of warriors who stood against the vast armies of Antiochus for the sake of their beliefs lived on in the post-biblical book of Maccabees. That was the first story of Hanukkah, but there would be plenty more stories of Hanukkah after that. The Talmud pays scant attention to the holiday of Hanukkah. 63 volumes of Talmud covering literally every aspect of Jewish life and law, and Hanukkah gets not one. A brief mention of the miracle of oil in the tractate on Shabbat, the oil that lasted 8 days when it should have only lasted for one, and then some classically Talmudic arguing about how to light the Hanukkah candles, where to place the Hanukkah menorah. Are you really allowed to read by the light of the Hanukkah menorah? Yes. And then it's done. The rabbis who wrote the Talmud had no love lost for the Hasmoneans, the descendants of the Maccabees who were priests. I suppose old rivalries live on even during Hanukkah. And there are women's tales of Hanukkah from the late ancient age as well. The story of Hannah and her 7 sons who sacrificed their lives one by one rather than bow down to Antiochus as God. And the hero's tale of the brave Judith who slew the enemy general, Holofernes, and saved her city from destruction. But Hanukkah remained a minor holiday until it came to America and found its home. And I know what you're thinking. It's all about competing with that other winter festival of lights. But there are deeper bonds between this land of freedom and those who fought for freedom in the ancient land so long ago. The uniquely American Hanukkah, filled with public celebrations, gift-giving, synagogue services, grand family gatherings, dreidel games with chocolate gelt and tasty treats, that began not so far from here and not so long ago, at least if you believe the 2 rabbis from Cincinnati who claim to have invented it all. Rabbi Isaac Mayer Wise, the founding father of Reform Judaism, his picture sitting right over there in the front row, along with Rabbi Max Lilienthal, also from Cincinnati, are generally credited by historians as the motivating force towards the evolution of Hanukkah from its origins as a minor festival with a tiny ritual that took place largely at home, rather than the synagogue, to one of major prominence in American Jewish life. In the years after the Civil War, as Christmas began to increase as a secular holiday practiced widely by American families, Rabbi Wise and Lilienthal used their newspapers to publicize the idea of involving children in a much grander Hanukkah holiday festival and encouraging congregations across the country to participate. It's all there in the pages of the American Israelite, so that should be it. Except a famous American Jewish woman had said pretty much the same thing more than a decade before. 10 years before Wise or Lilienthal would invent the synagogue-based model for public Hanukkah celebrations, Emma Lazarus, the great American Jewish poet whose sonnet adorns the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free," had already written an earlier poem in her youth, which was published as The Feast of Lights and set to music with the title Kindle the Tapers, and was played regularly for services at Hanukkah and at her family's congregation, the historic Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of New York, the oldest synagogue in America. That would make Emma Lazarus the founding mother of Hanukkah in America, if it weren't for the fact that another American Jewish woman had invented Hanukkah a full generation before. The first tangible evidence of Hanukkah being celebrated as an important holiday in the United States is credited to none other than the belle of the Old South, a woman born in Charleston, South Carolina, in 1797. Her name was Penina Moise. Sometime in the 1820s, she composed a hymn called The Feast of Lights, which was sung at services by a large choir singing the story of Hanukkah in English amidst the elegant candlelighting ceremony on the first night of Hanukkah each year. This grand public celebration of Hanukkah became a fixture of the beginning of Charleston society's busy social schedule. So it started in Charleston with Miss Penina Moise, who was the founding mother of Hanukkah in America. Definitely. Unless you count George Washington, who once recounted how he celebrated Hanukkah in the bitter cold of Valley Forge on the second night of Hanukkah in December of 1778, with an unnamed Jewish soldier, a Polish immigrant, who told the general he had fled his homeland because he could not practice his faith under the Prussian government there. Washington was walking among the troops when he saw young soldiers sitting apart from the others, huddled over what looked like two tiny flames. Washington approached the soldier and asked him what he was doing. The soldier explained that he was a Jew and that he'd lit the candles to celebrate Hanukkah, a festival commemorating the miraculous victory of his people so many centuries ago over the tyranny of a much better equipped and more powerful enemy who had sought to deny them their freedom. The soldier then expressed his confidence that just as, with God's help, the Jews of ancient times were ultimately victorious, so too would the Americans be victorious in their just cause for freedom. The future founding father thanked the soldier and walked back to where the rest of the troops had camped, warmed by the inspiration that these two little flames might bring the knowledge that miracles can happen even now. But whether it was Washington and our unknown soldier of the American Revolution, or Panina Moise, who lit up Charleston's Jewish life, or Emma Lazarus, who inspired the America to be a land of freedom for all who came to our shores, or Rabbis Wise and Lilienthal, who thought they invented it all, you can see a pattern here, I'm sure. The great American Hanukkah has become just that because religious freedom, the forever fight for democracy, respect for diversity, and the power of a small light to illumine the darkness, the ability of a few people to make a difference in the world, these are the American values which the American Hanukkah has grown to represent. May we all be bearers of such vision and such light. Happy Hanukkah. Shabbat Shalom.